And today we'll be debating a series of unfortunate... And today we'll be debating... And today we'll be debating a series of... We tried.
This is a bad beginning. Welcome to Adaptable,
the show where we debate whether the book or the movie is better.
I'm Jake.
And I'm Josh. And today we'll be debating
Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events. Before we get to the debate, let's talk plot.
Now, A Series of Unfortunate Events is 13 books long, but we will be spoiling the movie and the first 3 books.
Our story begins with the 3 Baudelaire children who have very recently become orphans.
In light of their parents' recent death, Violet, the inventor, Klaus, the reader, and baby Sonny, the biter, are sent to live with their distant relative, Count Olaf.
It quickly becomes clear that Count Olaf's motivation for adopting the children is to steal their family's fortune.
The Baudelaires manage to escape the clutches of Count Olaf, but then enter into an unfortunate cycle by which they are sent to live with a new guardian. Count Olaf shows up in disguise, and said guardian is killed.
Every time Count Olaf arrives, the 3 children are the only ones who can see through his disguise, and must use their ingenuity to try and foil his plot.
All of these events are recorded and recounted to the audience by the mysterious Lemony Snicket. Now, sir, would you like to be the one to kick off our vicious, forthright debate?
That is a very fine decision.
Excellent.
The books are far superior to the movie, and it's no mystery as to why. Number 1. The author, Daniel Handler, pen name, Lemony Snicket, is an incredible author who writes rich, funny, goofy, scary characters that our imaginations thrive on, and it's hard for actors to live up to those expectations that we have as readers. Now, barring Jim Carrey, personally I don't think any of the actors lived up to those expectations or really did that great of a job. Therefore, the books are clearly better. Number 2. It's a picky one, but to me it's important. At the beginning of every book, Lemony Snicket writes a foreword or acknowledgement to Beatrice. And they are some of the funniest and weirdest things I have ever read, and I constantly am wondering, who is this Beatrice? But they get me every time. In the second book, he writes, "For Beatrice, my love for you shall live forever. You, however, did not." They're funny, they're witty. You don't get any sense of that in the movie. It's a small thing, but it really shows you the tone of the book and how wonderfully clever and humorous Lemony Snicket is. 1 and 2 add up to 3, and that final point is this. It's almost impossible sometimes for a screenwriter and a director to encompass the essence of an author. Lemony Snicket as a writer is creative and funny, charming, witty, dark, and most importantly, so much of these books come from the rich narration that he gives. And just having the visuals from a movie to try and encompass that narration, it just falls short. For example, in the first book, he uses a metaphor, then pauses after that metaphor, and uses 2 pages to explain what that metaphor means to the readers. Stuff like that you just don't get in the movies. It's really hard to take these literary jokes and represent them as a visual medium. And that's why overall the books will always be better. To sum it all up, if you don't have Lemony Snicket, you got nothing.
Brad Silberberg might have something to say about that. The books are good, but the movie's better. Here's why. So, rewatching A Series of Unfortunate Events movie just yesterday, I noticed something they did in the process that I haven't seen in any other book-to-movie adaptation. And that is, they went in with a very concise plan about how they were going to approach their source material and deviate from it in a way that is still meaningful. And this is done in a couple of different ways. The first, and most important, is that the core conflict between the Baudelaire orphans and Count Olaf remains constant. Despite the fact that parts of the books don't make it into the final cut of the movie, we never lose sight of the fact that Count Olaf is evil and trying to steal the children's fortune, and they will always outwit him. The second point is where I'm going to respectfully disagree with Jake, in that the characters from the movie are just as vibrant, if not more so, than the ones in Lemony Snicket's book. First and foremost being Jim Carrey. He pops off the screen just like he does in The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, Ace Ventura, or Bruce Almighty, with an incredibly nuanced comedic performance in multiple different ways, as Stefano for The Reptile Room, or as Captain Sham for The Wide Window. And that's not to say anything of the supporting cast. Meryl Streep nails it as Aunt Josephine, Timothy Spall is a surprisingly excellent Mr. Poe, and Billy Connolly steals the show for me, as he is completely different from The Reptile Room's description of him, but steals my heart within 30 seconds of dialogue. After conflict and characters, the third thing that I think is very effective within the series of unfortunate events movie is the accoutrement. Specifically, the sound design and the cinematography. The soundtrack for this movie is awesome. It's great study music, regardless if you think this movie is better or not. Go listen to it. And I think that's particularly effective in the way the movie is shot, where they show a lot of the action and tension between characters rather than telling it. They're adapting Lemony Snicket's prolific writing to their visual medium and doing it in a way that I think is very compelling. The source material from the books is great, but Jim Carrey's performance and an excellent cinematographer buoys the movie to new heights.
And pushes it off a cliff. Let's talk about actors for a second. You mentioned Jim Carrey and Meryl Streep. Now, in my argument, I allowed that Jim Carrey does a superb job. But name two other actors in that movie that have gone on to do anything else.
Okay, first off, Billy Connolly, who plays Uncle Monty, is the dad in Boondock Saints, for those older fans of this series. Timothy Spall, Mr. Poe, you may recognize as Wormtail from the Harry Potter movies. And just as a little Easter egg, the film critic at the end of the movie is actually played by Dustin Hoffman.
In my defense, I said went on to do anything else.
So, we are dealing with some quality actors here. And I'd just like to point out that they also do a lot with limited screen time. Now, watching the movie through again, I don't miss things in the books that wouldn't help out a movie, such as the run of zombies in the snow from The Reptile Room, or the children actually leaving Count Olaf's house to go shop for puttanesca. These are excellent beats for a story in a book, but the movie does just as well getting those across without losing any, trimming the fat.
If the movie does just as well, how come there was never another one made? And yet there are 10 more books.
Admittedly, the movie didn't do as well in theaters as they were hoping for, and tone has a big part to play in this. It's really difficult for children's books to be, for children, and as macabre as this series is. And so you're already dealing with a niche audience who's going to want to go and see it if they haven't heard of it before.
So what you're saying is the tone just doesn't translate as well in cinema.
Oh, I would say the tone translates very well. I just think the outreach for the books didn't reach a wide enough audience to push it to mainstream popularity until after the movie had been made.
At the end of the day, the audience that loved the books didn't show up to the movie because the movie didn't encompass the tone of Lemony Snicket's writing, which really is what the readers were coming back for again and again.
That's fair, but you're basing your love for Lemony Snicket's writing off of his later books, and the movie deals with the first three, which are when Lemony Snicket's still finding his footing. In particular, the ending to The Bad Beginning is a bit of a stretch, and I think the movie genuinely does it better, with a proposed marriage being broken, not because the bride wrote with her left hand instead of her right hand, but because Klaus decides to burn the only scrap of evidence that makes that marriage real.
I disagree. Take that example right there. Violet writing the marriage agreement with her left hand is what nullifies the marriage. It's a small, funny detail. It's great. You never see it coming. It's better than just burning the marriage certificate, which anyone could do. Lemony Snicket is all about the details, and that's exactly what you lose when you move to a visual medium. I also disagree that he gets better as he goes on. I think he takes the first book, knocks it out of the park, and that his style of writing is very consistent from book 1 to book 13.
Miserable Mel.
4's a little iffy.
So we've talked a lot about what the movie is lacking that's in the books, but I do want to touch briefly on something that the books lack that you find in the movie. And that is some emotional closure. There's a lot of dark and twisted kind of acts and things that happen to the Baudelaire children in the books, and we're kind of left drifting from place to place with no sense of home rather than each other. And there's a really effective moment in the movie where Violet reads the letter that they received from their parents from a long, long time ago. And the note that the dead Baudelaire parents give to their children as Violet reads it aloud is powerful, and it's genuinely emotionally poignant. And especially today, where even we as people are kind of divided, it's that come back together and be together. There is hope. And that's something we don't see in any of them, really.
I completely agree with that. There is hope. It is very powerful when she reads that letter. All of that is true. However, I think that still harkens back to the fact that that's not what Lemony Snicket intended. He tells you right away when you open the first book, the first few pages are filled with him saying, if you're looking for a happy book, close this now. If you want a book about hope, go find something else. This is a dark story. This is bad. And that's yet again where I think the movies differ from the books, and it actually takes away from what the author is intending.
That's fair, but we're not talking about what the author is intending and whether or not the movie did what the author did. We're looking at which one's a more effective story. And with the emotional beats that play out at the end of it, I do think that the movie does a better job of telling us a story about 3 children that have dealt with a lot of hardship and are ready to move on together.
Look, there are millions of children's books that end with hope and happiness and a bright future, but this isn't that. And that's what makes it special and different, is that it was never meant to be about hope. It talks about the fact that life can be really hard.
All right, you make some good points. I can admit it. The books are better.
Thanks so much for watching. Please feel free to leave your likes and comments below.
Let us know who you agree with. Let us know who you disagree with. Let us know if we missed anything that would have made our arguments better.
I'm Jake.
I'm Josh.
And this has been Adaptable.
Now, sir, would you like to kick I'm talking too fast.
That is a very fine idea.
Excellent.
Cut.
Oh, decision.
Vision.
It's not VFI. So when I watched the movie, when I rewatched. Ruh-roh. Raggy. Okay, I'm ready. Is the camera still rolling?
Yes.
Perfect.